We'd been out about a month when Hellsbell's grouper asked if one of us would like to make a quick trip back to headquarters. Our portion of the cuts had grown into a large number. He wanted a crew to come down and help drive them home. We were slowly getting far enough away from our range that the number of our brands was thinning out considerably. Also, there were a good number of cows and calves in the herd. A mixed herd was harder to drive, and the dust, heat, and handling were hard on the young calves. I quickly volunteered for the ride. I was saddling my horse before daylight the next morning when Billy joined me. Somehow he'd managed to talk Gruber into letting him go. I wondered what he was up to while we made the 60-mile trip in one day's ride, arriving at headquarters late in the evening. Our little Texas horses were tough. The next morning we saddled fresh horses and found Wyron in camp with one of his wagon bosses about 10 miles out. They had a herd gathered out on the plain and were branding calves. The dust rolled up thick from beneath the hooves of the herd, and the air was filled with the sound of bawling cattle. 3 crews were working on the ground, with a couple of mounted men roping and dragging calves to each crew. Wyron was working with one of the ground crews, and we rode up to him while he jumped on the next calf drugged to him by its heels. Once the calf was branded, ear-notched, and castrated, he got up from the animal and wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of one shirt sleeve. "You boys decided to quit eating up ranch supplies and playing cards, while the rest of us work for a living?" We tried to hide our discomfort over his obvious knowledge of our rep outfit's recent behavior so far from home. "HB said to tell you we need a few hands to help drive a herd back here," Billy said. "Did he give you a tally of the herd you've rounded up?" Wyron was a big man, with a grumpy way about him. But despite his jab about what had been going on out on the general roundup, he seemed pleased at the news we delivered. I handed him a tally written on a scrap of paper. He mumbled to himself over it for a few minutes. "It'll be a couple of days before we finish up branding. You fellows pitch in here, and I'll send you back with a couple of hands once we're through. My stomach has been bothering me something fierce, and I wondered if I might get the time off to ride over to Clarendon and see if I can't get some Fletcher's Castoria." I kept a straight face while he glared at me like I was about to be fired. "Never set much store by patent medicines," he growled. "You know there was no liquor in the roost, don't you? They tell me it's dry as a bone. Is the pain in your gut bad?" "Terrible." I rubbed my belly and grimaced. "Well, go on then. I wouldn't want anybody saying I ignored a dying man's wishes." He dismissed me with a wave of his hand as he turned back to his work. Afraid he would change his mind, I whirled my horse around and took off for Clarendon without so much as a goodbye to Billy. The thought of being able to look up that girl from the stagecoach, with no competition from him, lifted my spirits. He could work his butt off branding calves while I did a little romancing. My elation was short-lived. I hadn't gone a mile before Billy caught up to me. I knew he was coming along by the grin on his face. I just couldn't figure out how he'd managed it. "I told Wyron you were so sick that I was worried about you making it to Clarendon." "He fell for that?" "No. He's just a good boss, and I offered to mail some letters for him. You're quite the charmer, aren't you?" Billy shook his vest pocket, and it jingled. "I got us a $10 apiece advance on our wages to cover the cost of your snake oil." Why does all this surprise me? We loped north through the breaks of that country. I was tickled to death that Wyron let us go. But there was one nagging thought that put a little bit of a damper on my general good mood. I felt guilty, but for once I was wishing Billy wasn't along. I didn't intend on sharing that girl's attention.